We do walk amongst gods and we walk amongst angels, and we need to know that.
Newly uncovered footage of Snoop Dogg and Big U is shaking things up in a major way. It's raising serious questions about the real forces surrounding Nipsey Hussle before his death and what was quietly revealed off-camera long before the tragedy completely reshapes the story people thought they knew. The public was told this footage changes everything, and that statement hits harder the more you look at it. But before diving into the explosive footage itself, there's one thing that needs to be clear right now. Nipsey Hussle was never reckless with his words or his moves. This was a man who built a legacy from the ground up, someone who reinvested into the same neighborhood that once tried to tear him down, someone who broke free from cycles that trapped so many others. Nipsey didn't move sloppy or emotional. He moved with purpose and vision. Even Snoop Dogg made that clear. Snoop described Nipsey as a leader, a teacher, a father, an entrepreneur, and someone whose vision was on a whole different level. You can hear Snoop say it directly in the archived interview, in his own words. Now here's where things start to feel disturbing. During that very same time period, Big U was publicly talking about the type of street tension Nipsey was dealing with behind closed doors. In a separate interview, Big U explains how certain people were already pulling up on Nipsey with energy that didn't belong anywhere near his space. And that's exactly where this newly surfaced footage turns explosive, because when you place Snoop's emotional reflections about Nipsey's mindset right next to Big U's breakdown of street violations happening in real time, it creates a picture far more complicated than the simplified narrative the public was handed after Nipsey's death. But before breaking down the footage itself, there's something the mainstream never wanted to spotlight. There were years of quiet tension, misunderstandings, and whispered warnings surrounding Nipsey's rise. People close to the situation knew it, even if they didn't speak on it openly. To understand why these recordings matter so much, you have to understand Nipsey's position. He wasn't just a rapper. He wasn't just a businessman. He wasn't just a community leader. He was the bridge, one of the only figures capable of bringing together people who had been divided for decades. His music didn't just inspire, it broke barriers, and even Snoop acknowledged that power. But here's the painful truth. When someone becomes a symbol of unity, they also become a target, from sides they understand and from sides they don't. And that's why this footage of Snoop and Big U feels so unsettling, because according to the newly uncovered material, Snoop makes statements about Nipsey's legacy that only make sense if he already knew Nipsey was dealing with serious pressure behind the scenes. Pressure wasn't just coming from the outside, it was coming from close to home too. When certain statements are placed next to Big U's comments about street politics, it starts to suggest Nipsey may have been facing tension from multiple directions at the same time. So let's lock in the factual timeline first. Nipsey Hussle was murdered on March 31st, 2019, and outlets everywhere reported the same information almost immediately. There was no delay, no confusion about the date, just shock spreading fast. Straightforward on the surface, Eric Holder was taken into police custody, confirmed during a Hot 97 breaking news segment. The clip opens right at that moment, and the tone says everything: disbelief, shock, devastation, all of it hitting at once. Nobody could understand how someone so deeply loved, so widely respected, could be taken out in the very community he worked so hard to uplift. As those first chaotic days unfolded, the public narrative hardened almost instantly. Holder acted alone. Holder acted emotionally. It was framed as a personal dispute. Hot 97 even outlined the alleged argument, a clash of egos, a burst of anger, a tragic moment that supposedly spiraled out of control.
Nip shouldn't have addressed that because Nip knew who he was.
But here's the part that never sat right with people close to Nipsey, and it feels even more suspicious when viewed next to the newly surfaced footage of Snoop Dogg and Big U. In Big U's interview, he makes a statement that directly challenges the entire story about what allegedly triggered the situation. He says it plainly, no dancing around it. And secondly, it ain't no paperwork on the man. That line matters a lot. That statement implies the supposed argument doesn't line up with street protocol at all. It also raises the possibility that hip-hop media accepted an explanation that didn't fully add up.
Man, Nipsey Hussle, man, that's my dear brother right there. Nipsey is he's a South Central legend. He was a businessman. He was a leader, a teacher, a father, an entrepreneur. All of the above.
Now here's where the new Snoop footage becomes jaw-dropping. In a clip recorded before Nipsey's passing, Snoop speaks candidly about the emotional and spiritual weight Nipsey was carrying behind the scenes. This wasn't a memorial, and it wasn't polished. This was raw and unscripted. Snoop reveals how much Nip was carrying on his own shoulders and how much pressure came with simply trying to be a positive force. When you place that next to Big U's comments about people pulling up, violating space, and showing hostility, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The mainstream explanation suddenly feels too clean, too simple, too convenient. Because as Big U himself pointed out, Nipsey had just been taking photos with community kids earlier that day, showing nothing but love and normal energy, which makes the official story raise even more questions. This wasn't just a random stop at the Marathon store, not at all. When Nipsey pulled up there, it was part of his daily mission to uplift the neighborhood and keep his presence felt where it mattered most. And that leads to the biggest question of all. If Nipsey Hussle was becoming a real bridge between communities, then who exactly felt threatened by that kind of power? Now this is where the footage at the center of this entire video steps in. A newly surfaced clip shows Snoop Dogg and Big U locked into a raw, unfiltered conversation, recorded long before the tragedy, but carrying a tone that now feels haunting and almost prophetic. Looking back, that footage hits different. Snoop reflects on Nipsey's rise, explaining how he watched Nip evolve into a visionary way beyond his years. He even recalls Nip pushing him to dream bigger, on a scale so massive that Snoop admits he didn't fully understand it at the time. You can feel the respect, the surprise, and the weight in that moment. But here's the eerie part. Snoop goes on to explain that Nip had a vision, something huge, something generational, and that vision came with a heavy burden that Snoop clearly recognized.
You make records with YG, you made records with Game, you made records with Problem, you making records with Bloods. Crippin' and Bloods making records, and y'all really love each other, and y'all bonding with each other, y'all pulling up together, you in they neighborhoods, you loving them and they loving you. You are a peace advocate, Nip.
Around that same period, Big U is in another interview breaking down the exact street energy Nipsey was dealing with. Disrespect, boundary violations, people approaching Nip like he owed them something. Big U also warned about the danger of being too accessible. And when you watch the newly uncovered footage of Snoop and Big U standing together, speaking on Nip with a mix of pride, concern, and awareness of his position, the tension underneath becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just two men reminiscing for nostalgia. These are two authority figures in the neighborhood ecosystem, both understanding that Nipsey's role was growing into something bigger than anything the streets had seen in decades. And that forces a disturbing question into the open. Was Nipsey's rise creating silent fractures behind the scenes? Fractures the public never knew about until now. And remember, after Nipsey's passing, Snoop didn't hold back at the memorial. He honored Nip with a level of love and admiration that's rarely seen in hip-hop culture. But even during that memorial, Snoop let something slip, a moment most viewers missed where he acknowledged Nipsey's spiritual weight and how unusual his presence truly was. Why does that matter so much? Because people carrying that level of influence, that kind of presence, often face pressure long before the public ever sees it coming.
Nipsey says to you, don't be around here because we all know you're an informant, you're a snitch, I don't want you around.
Now with the newly surfaced footage, the pieces are lining up fast. Snoop expressing deep concern and admiration for Nipsey's role. Big U explaining escalating pressure and people violating Nip's space. Hot 97 confirming the suspect approached Nip directly in that same way. Big U describing the danger, Snoop acknowledging Nip's spiritual weight and what comes with it. When you stack all of this together, the cracks behind the scenes become impossible to ignore. The pressure Nipsey was under becomes clear, and once you truly understand the emotional and political forces surrounding him in his final years, that unseen conversation between Snoop Dogg and Big U suddenly carries an entirely different and much heavier meaning. This doesn't sound like two OGs casually reflecting on a younger artist finding his lane. It sounds like two men who fully understood that Nipsey was walking a path very few survive, a dangerous intersection of leadership, independence, and community responsibility that historically put a target on anyone strong enough to carry that weight.
Nip shouldn't address that because Nip knew who he was.
Right.
Like the nigga was they guy. Like he worked for Nip, grew up with Nip, and he really was he was the man. He was their guy.
Right.
He really was a shooter in the streets. And secondly, it ain't no paperwork on the man.
In the newly resurfaced clip, Snoop's body language says just as much as his words. There's a quiet seriousness there, totally different from his usual laid-back energy. He talks about Nipsey building his own world, buying property, designing infrastructure, creating real opportunities, and lifting people who had never been given a real chance before. When Snoop mentions Nipsey building his own doggy land, his own custom environment, his own movement, it's more than praise, it's recognition. Nipsey wasn't just becoming successful, he was becoming autonomous. And autonomy is powerful. Autonomy is respected, but autonomy in the wrong environment can be dangerous. Because autonomy means you no longer need gatekeepers. It means you're creating your own system, and not everybody wants to see that happen. That's exactly why Big U's comments on Drink Champs matter so much now. In hindsight, he explained with clarity how Nipsey's growing presence created friction with people who felt entitled to access, respect, or favors. Nipsey didn't want to disappear from his people. He didn't want to be unreachable. He didn't want security walls separating him from the community he loved. He stayed grounded, kept showing up for the same streets that raised him, the same people he grew up with. But that loyalty came with a price. And both Snoop and Big U seemed painfully aware of that cost. The newly surfaced footage of Snoop Dogg and Big U carries so much weight. When you slow it down, listen carefully, and compare it to every interview they gave before and after the tragedy, something uncomfortable starts to stand out. He makes one thing very clear right away. Nipsey wasn't above the politics, not at all. He was surrounded by them.
That's where he meet the kids. That's where he greet the people. That's where he still stay grounded. You know what I mean? Like if he don't go there no more, he don't show up. He these other niggas, he leave LA and move somewhere else. He in Hollywood. He just took pictures with some little baby.
That detail alone changes everything. And it gets even colder when you look back at the Hot 97 discussion right after the tragedy, where the host described the suspect's reaction as guilt-driven, shame-filled, and emotionally unstable. In that broadcast, they framed it as a sudden emotional explosion, a moment of volatility that spiraled out of control. That was the story pushed to the public, but Big U's comments tell a very different story. Big U explains that the suspect wasn't some stranger or random outsider. He was a known figure in the neighborhood, someone who grew up around them, someone many people, including Nipsey, had interacted with over the years. Big U even makes a clear distinction when he explains the difference between a homeboy and someone who just exists around the space. That distinction matters a lot because it pushes back hard on the idea of a simple emotional snap. Instead, it points to something that had been building, a long-running boundary issue, a presence that wasn't welcome, a situation already recognized by people close to Nipsey. And that's exactly why the newly uncovered footage of Snoop Dogg and Big U carries so much weight. When you slow it down, listen carefully, and compare it to every interview they gave before and after the tragedy, something uncomfortable starts to stand out.
One of the first conversations me and Nipsey had, he was talking to me about, hey, cuz, you need to do a amusement park, cuz, doggy land.
Neither of them ever described Nipsey's final years as calm or peaceful. Neither suggested he was untouched by community politics. Neither implied that the situation around him was simple or clean. Instead, sometimes intentionally and sometimes without realizing it, they both revealed that Nipsey was navigating a minefield. That reality becomes even clearer when you watch Snoop's tone during the memorial. His voice cracks, his pacing slows. You can feel the weight he's carrying. He wasn't just honoring a friend, he was mourning a leader whose presence carried real spiritual weight. Snoop even said it directly, acknowledging the kind of pressure only a chosen few ever experience. And if Nipsey was truly walking in a higher purpose the way Snoop described it, then his visibility and moral direction wouldn't just inspire people, it would intimidate them. Now, circle back to Big U's breakdown of the street dynamics. He made a comment that feels almost prophetic now, something that sounds like it came from someone who already understood how dangerous the environment really was. That line hits heavy in hindsight because it doesn't sound like speculation, it sounds like awareness. And when you connect that awareness to everything else, the picture becomes a lot darker than what the public was originally told. That comment hits way heavier when you look at it after Nipsey's death, because it sounds like something said by someone who already understood how dangerous the environment really was. Someone who knew that even a man as respected as Nipsey was never fully exempt from danger.
He got killed by one of his own homeboys. Right. Well, at some point, he wasn't his homeboy.
And this is where the resurfaced Snoop Dogg and Big U footage becomes emotionally loaded. The tone isn't casual at all. It feels like preparation, like two men sensing something coming that they couldn't fully say out loud. They talk about Nipsey's leadership, his influence, his ability to bring unity, and his rare gift for bridging gangs in neighborhoods that had been divided for generations. But here's the detail that stands out the most. Snoop doesn't frame Nipsey as just a rising star. He frames him like a superhero figure, someone whose movement required constant protection, constant awareness, constant vigilance. Even Hot 97 said similar things at the time. And when multiple people in positions of influence independently describe Nipsey as superhero, godlike, leader, teacher, it becomes clear he was breaking the mold.
Violence ain't gonna follow you wherever it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's gonna follow you wherever it's gonna follow you.
And whenever someone breaks the mold, resistance grows just as fast. That brings us back to the most critical moment in the newly surfaced Snoop and Big U clip. There's a brief moment, just seconds long, where the energy shifts completely. Snoop mentions how Nipsey's mindset was stronger than rappers who'd been in the game for 15 years. You can see the seriousness in Snoop's face. You can see Big U nod quietly. You can feel that both of them understood something deeper about the pressure Nipsey was under. Because when someone thinks like that, moves like that, and leads like that, they stop being just artists. They become larger-than-life figures in their space. And every figure like that attracts opposition.
Nip mentality was stronger than a rapper that's been in the game for 15 years.
This is the part the public never fully understood. This is what the media didn't show. When you watch that clip closely, Snoop and Big U aren't smiling. They're reflecting with a gravity that only makes sense in hindsight. It feels like they knew Nipsey was carrying more than anyone realized. What makes it even more disturbing is how this private seriousness lines up with hints Big U dropped publicly. In his interview, he mentioned someone approaching him the day before Nipsey died, confronting him with similar accusations about being a rat. He recalls the interaction clearly. That moment mirrors exactly what Nipsey reportedly told Holder, the same accusation, the same tension, one day apart. And this is where everything shifts. Once you see how these pieces line up, the contradictions between narratives, the emotional weight Nipsey carried, the spiritual language Snoop used, and the street dynamics Big U described, one thing becomes unavoidable.
He built his own world. He built his own thing that people from around the world are starting to come to, take pictures of, stand in front of, immortalize this man.
This wasn't just a random tragedy. It was a storm forming in real time. A storm people around Nipsey could feel coming, but no one had the power to stop. This is the chilling clip that cracked open the truth about Nipsey's final days. And now we reach the moment everything has been building toward. The moment that forced journalists, fans, and even former associates of Nipsey Hussle to stop, rewind, and replay the footage over and over again. Because once you see this quiet clip of Snoop Dogg and Big U together, filmed long before Nipsey's death, it becomes impossible to ignore the truth staring back at you. They weren't talking like men caught off guard by tragedy. They were speaking like men who already sensed a threat circling Nipsey long before the world ever heard the name Eric Holder. The footage doesn't start dramatic at all. No arguing, no raised voices, no theatrics. It opens casually, like two veterans reflecting on a rising figure. But as the conversation goes deeper, the tone shifts in a way you can't unsee. Snoop leans in. Big U pauses longer than normal before answering. Their eyes don't match the relaxed posture they're trying to hold, and the moment Nipsey's name comes up, the energy in the room changes completely. Something heavy, something unspoken, something unmistakably tense. In the resurfaced clip, Snoop starts talking about Nipsey's mindset, not the music, not the fame, not the public image, the burden. He explains how Nipsey was operating on levels most artists never touch, how Nip's decisions were never simple because every positive move carried political consequences in the streets, in the industry, and even among people Nip considered family. If you listen closely, Snoop dropped something that never made it into any memorial speech. It wasn't in later interviews. It wasn't in any documentary. He describes Nipsey as fighting battles most people couldn't even see. That one phrase sent viewers into a frenzy when the footage resurfaced, because when you place it next to Big U's Drink Champ's explanation of Nipsey's environment, the puzzle finally starts to come together. Big U's breakdown in that interview was blunt. The idea that violence follows you regardless of growth. That message hits harder when viewed alongside Snoop's visible concern. In the footage, Snoop doesn't talk about Nipsey like a peer. He talks about him like a younger brother. There's protection in his tone, softness in his voice, the way he folds his hands, the way he stares off between sentences. It's the body language of someone who knows something is wrong but can't say it out loud. Big U's presence is just as telling. He isn't animated, he isn't joking, he isn't storytelling. He's locked in, focused. It's the posture of someone who understands that the higher you rise, the more you risk, and that success doesn't erase old tensions, it magnifies them. And the moment viewers flag the most comes midway through the clip, when Snoop says Nipsey had a mindset stronger than rappers who had been in the game for 15 years. It's something Snoop also said during Nipsey's memorial tribute, but in the resurfaced footage, when he delivers that same line, there's no smile at all. His face shows concern, not pride. The moment Snoop finishes speaking, the camera briefly cuts to Big U, and he gives a slow, almost reluctant nod, like he's confirming something he wishes wasn't true. Then Big U adds a line that feels almost prophetic when you line it up with what came next. He says something to the effect of a man like that carrying a lot of weight on him. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's just honest. And the heaviness in his voice matches the same serious tone he later showed on Drink Champs. When Big U described Nipsey's situation at the Marathon store, he explained that Nip was dealing with people pulling up on him with energy that didn't belong in that space. And when you connect those two moments, the weight Snoop described and the pressure Big U confirmed, the pattern becomes crystal clear. Nipsey wasn't threatened because he was weak, he was threatened because he was strong. He wasn't a target because he failed. He became a target because he succeeded in ways that disrupted the old order. That's exactly why this footage changes everything, because it shows that Nipsey's closest elders, mentors, and big homies were already concerned about the energy around him. They weren't predicting his death, but they were acknowledging a level of tension, conflict, and invisible pressure that the public never had access to. The resurfaced footage gets even more haunting when you compare it to the Hot 97 broadcast from the day the suspect was captured. The hosts expressed disbelief that Nipsey could be taken out by someone so close to home, someone from the same neighborhood, someone he grew up around. They said it felt unthinkable. But what Hot 97 framed as unthinkable, Big U had already described as predictable. In his interview, he explained that Nipsey refused to abandon his community. He refused to move to Hollywood. He refused to act bigger than the people who raised him. That loyalty was powerful, but it also created risk. The same crowd that loved him was the same crowd that contained resentment, admiration, and jealousy living side by side. That internal conflict is exactly what the resurfaced footage captures without ever spelling it out. The pauses, the lowered voices, the nervous glances, the careful wording. all of it sends one clear message. Nipsey was navigating a reality far more dangerous than anyone realized. And Snoop's tone in the clip is especially heartbreaking because it mirrors the same emotional weight he carried at the memorial when he spoke to Nipsey's father, mother, and children. His voice cracked repeatedly when he spoke. He said it with pain. That line takes on a much darker meaning once you've seen the resurfaced footage, because when Snoop speaks those same words years earlier, he carries the same sorrow in his eyes. It's the sorrow of someone who recognized both the beauty and the danger in Nipsey's mission long before the world caught on. When Snoop uses spiritual language like that, he isn't being poetic at all. He's being honest about the weight Nipsey carried every single day. Because when someone becomes a godlike figure in their neighborhood, they don't just inspire love, they also spark loyalty, fear, jealousy, admiration, resentment, and desperation all at the same time. That's the emotional truth the resurfaced Snoop and Big U footage exposes. Nipsey Hussle wasn't taken from this world because he was reckless or careless. He was taken because he represented a level of power, unity, and transformation that very few communities ever get to witness. And both the positive and negative forces surrounding that power were already closing in from every direction. The footage ends in a way that feels almost scripted by fate. Snoop talks about how Nipsey was always building, always planning, always pushing the people around him to think bigger. That moment directly echoes his memorial speech, where he said the same thing with pain in his voice. Big U sits beside him in the resurfaced clip, nodding quietly, but his eyes tell a different story. They look tired, they look heavy, almost pained. And when the clip finally cuts, you're left with one overwhelming feeling. These two men, who both loved Nipsey in their own way, were already bracing themselves for the reality that his path would never be easy. That's why this clip changes everything. It doesn't rewrite the facts of the murder, it rewrites the understanding of the environment surrounding Nipsey. It exposes the quiet warning signs, the subtle concerns, and the emotional forecasts his elders recognized long before the tragedy happened. It shows the people closest to him understood the risks, even if they couldn't predict the exact moment those risks would explode. Nipsey Hussle walked a path very few men have ever walked, and this resurfaced footage of Snoop Dogg and Big U, recorded long before the tragedy, proves they both saw the weight he was carrying and feared what that weight might one day cost. Now make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share this video right now. This conversation matters and more people need to see this. Hit the cards on your screen, keep it locked right here, and stay tuned because we've got plenty more coming your way.